The small town of Maplewood was blanketed in snow, its streets shimmering under the soft glow of streetlights. It was Christmas Eve, and the air carried a mix of excitement and calm. Families bustled about, finishing last-minute preparations for the holiday, decorating trees, wrapping gifts, and baking cookies. But amidst all the cheer, one person stood apart from the warmth of celebration. Emma Carter had just finished her evening shift at the local coffee shop. Her feet ached from standing all day, and her hands were still stained with faint coffee grounds despite her best efforts to wash them off. She pulled her scarf tighter around her neck as she stepped out into the biting cold. The wind stung her cheeks, but she didn't mind. There was something peaceful about walking home alone on a night like this, away from the noise and chaos of crowded malls and busy kitchens. As Emma made her way down the quiet streets, her thoughts drifted to her own plans for Christmas. This year would be different. She wouldn't be traveling to see her parents, who lived several hours away. Instead, she'd spend the holiday curled up on her couch with a mug of hot chocolate and a stack of books she'd been meaning to read. It wasn't glamorous, but it suited her just fine. After a long year filled with work stress and personal challenges, solitude felt almost comforting. But as she turned the corner onto Main Street, her attention was drawn to an unexpected sight. Sitting alone on a park bench near the edge of the square was an elderly man. He looked frail, his thin coat offering little protection against the freezing temperatures. His shoulders hunched forward slightly, and his gloved hands clutched something tightly. A photograph, perhaps? Snowflakes landed gently on his hat and coat, melting instantly against the fabric. Despite the festive lights strung above him, he seemed entirely disconnected from the world around him. Emma slowed her pace, studying him curiously. Something about the scene tugged at her heartstrings. Maybe it was the loneliness radiating off him or the way he stared blankly ahead, lost in thought. Whatever it was, she couldn't bring herself to simply walk past. Taking a deep breath, she approached cautiously, not wanting to startle him. "Hi there," she said softly, keeping her voice warm and friendly. "I saw you sitting here, and I thought you might like some company." The old man blinked slowly as if coming out of a trance. He glanced up at her, his eyes clouded with sadness but also a flicker of curiosity. For a moment he said nothing, simply looking at her as though trying to decide whether to trust her or not. Finally, he nodded slightly and offered a weak smile. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice rough and quiet. "It's kind of you to stop." Emma sat down beside him, careful to leave enough space so he wouldn't feel crowded. Up close, she could see how worn his face was, lined with years of hardship and loss. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his grip on the object in his lap. Now that she was closer, she realized it was indeed a photograph, an old one judging by the faded colors and creased edges. "I'm Emma," she introduced herself, hoping to ease the awkwardness of the situation. "Do you come here often?" He hesitated before answering. "Not really," he admitted. "But tonight, well, it felt right to sit here." His name, he told her after a pause, was Mr. Thompson. He explained that most people these days didn't call him by his first name anymore. It had been years since anyone had bothered to learn it. As they talked, Emma learned more about him. He lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, surviving on a modest pension. His wife had passed away earlier that year, leaving him without family or close friends. The photo in his hand was of her, taken decades ago when they were both young and full of hope. "She loved Christmas," Mr. Thompson said wistfully, gazing at the picture. "We used to bake together every year, pies, cakes, cookies. She always insisted we make extra so we could give some to the neighbors. Those were good times." Emma listened intently, feeling a lump form in her throat. She couldn't imagine what it must be like to lose someone so dear, especially during the holidays. The contrast between his memories and his current reality struck her deeply. Here he was, sitting alone on a cold bench while others celebrated with loved ones. It didn't seem fair. Determined to brighten his evening, even if only a little, Emma smiled warmly. "You know, I've got some leftover gingerbread cookies at my place, and I can make a mean cup of hot cocoa. Would you like to join me?" Just for a bit? Mr. Thompson looked surprised by the invitation. He hesitated, clearly unsure whether to accept. But after a moment, he nodded gratefully. "That's very kind of you," he said. "I'd like that." Together they walked back to Emma's tiny apartment, which was tucked above a bookstore. The building was old and creaky, but Emma had decorated it with fairy lights and garlands, giving it a cozy charm. Once inside, she set about making him comfortable. She brewed a pot of cocoa, played soft Christmas music, and lit a few candles to chase away the chill. Gradually, Marone relaxed, sharing more stories about his late wife and their life together. For a while, the mood lightened. Emma found herself laughing at Mr. Thompson's anecdotes about his wife's disastrous attempts at knitting scarves. She meant well, but let's just say I ended up with more holes than fabric. Yet beneath the surface there was still an underlying sadness, a reminder of everything he had lost, and then unexpectedly his demeanor shifted. He became distant, glancing repeatedly at the clock on the wall. When Emma asked if something was wrong, he hesitated before pulling an envelope from his pocket. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting, which he handed to her nervously. "This came to me recently," he explained, "from a neighbor who disappeared shortly afterward." Emma took the letter, her curiosity piqued. As she began to read, her stomach dropped. The contents spoke of strange occurrences around town, unexplained lights in the sky, missing persons, and cryptic warnings about something ominous approaching Earth. At first, she thought it sounded like the ramblings of a conspiracy theorist, but the look on Mr. Thompson's face told her otherwise. Before she could ask more questions, a loud rumble shook the building, followed by flashes of light outside the window. Heart pounding, Emma and Mr. Thompson rushed to investigate. What they saw next would change everything, for them and possibly for the entire world. Emma's heart raced as she and Mr. Thompson stood frozen at the window, staring out into the night. The once peaceful sky now pulsed with an eerie glow, casting strange shadows across the snow-covered rooftops. Above them, massive shapes descended, slowly through the clouds, shapes that didn't belong to any aircraft Emma had ever seen before. They were enormous, sleek, and metallic, their surfaces reflecting faint light like polished mirrors. Each ship emitted a low hum, resonating in the air and making her chest vibrate uncomfortably. What are those?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. She turned to look at Mr. Thompson, hoping he might have some explanation, or even reassurance. But his face was pale, his jaw clenched tightly shut. He gripped the windowsill so hard his knuckles turned white. "I think this is what the letter warned us about," he muttered under his breath. More to himself than to her, his tone carried a mix of fear and resignation, as though he'd known deep down that something like this could happen. The ships moved with unnatural precision, hovering silently over different parts of the town. One of them positioned itself, directly above Emma's building, its bulk blotting out the stars. A beam of intense light shot downward, illuminating the street below. People began spilling out of their homes, shielding their eyes and looking up in awe and terror. Some screamed, others cried, while a few simply stood there, paralyzed by shock. Emma felt panic rising within her. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this some kind of military experiment gone wrong? Or worse, were these alien invaders from another world? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She glanced at Mr. Thompson again, searching for guidance. If anyone knew what to do, it had to be him. He was the one who'd received the cryptic letter after all. "Mr. Thompson, we need to get out of here," she urged, tugging on his sleeve. "We can't stay in the open like this." But instead of running toward the door, Mr. Thompson pulled her away from the window and led her toward the basement. "No, not outside," he said firmly. "It's too dangerous. We'll hide downstairs." Confused but trusting his judgment, Emma followed him as they hurried down the narrow staircase. The basement was dimly lit, cluttered with boxes, old furniture, and dusty shelves lined with jars of preserves. It smelled musty, like forgotten things left untouched for years. Once inside, Mr. Thompson closed the door behind them and locked it securely. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the ships overhead grew louder, vibrating through the walls and floorboards. Emma hugged herself tightly, her teeth chattering, not just from the cold, but from sheer fear. She wanted to ask Mr. Thompson what was going on, how he knew about this, anything to ease the uncertainty gnawing at her nerves. But before she could say a word, he crouched down beside a stack of boxes and began rummaging through them. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, watching him curiously. He didn't answer immediately, his hands moving quickly as he shifted items aside. Finally, he revealed a hidden compartment built into the wall. From it, he pulled out a small device that looked like a cross between a flashlight and a walkie-talkie. Its surface was scratched and worn, as though it had been handled many times over the years. "My wife worked on classified projects before she passed," he explained quietly, holding the device up for Emma to see. "She always told me to keep this safe, just in case." "In case of what?" Emma blurted out, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Alien invasions?" Mr. Thompson nodded grimly. "Exactly." Emma stared at him, stunned. This gentle, grieving, old man, a stranger she'd met only hours ago, was guarding a secret far bigger than either of them realized. Her mind reeled as she tried to process everything. What kind of person kept such a thing hidden? And why hadn't he mentioned it earlier? Before she could press him further, Mr. Thompson activated the device. With a flick of a switch, it came to life, emitting a low, steady hum. Almost instantly, the vibrations from the ships above seemed to falter. The hum grew quieter, and the oppressive weight in the air lifted slightly. Emma watched in amazement as the largest ship hovering above their building retreated a few feet higher, its movements hesitant, almost cautious. "What did you just do?" she demanded, her voice rising with a mix of awe and confusion. "I don't know exactly," Mr. Thompson admitted, adjusting a dial on the device. "But whatever this is, it seems to interfere with their technology." As if on cue, a voice crackled through the device, speaking in a language neither of them understood. It sounded guttural, yet melodic, completely foreign to human ears. Emma's stomach churned. She couldn't tell whether the tone was friendly or hostile. Mr. Thompson fiddled with the controls until the voice switched to accented but clear English. "Earthling vessel detected. Do you seek peace or conflict?" Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. She glanced at Mr. Thompson, unsure how to respond. This wasn't just a random encounter, it was communication. Someone, or something, was talking to them, demanding answers. "We mean no harm," Mr. Thompson replied steadily, his voice calm despite the tension radiating off him. "We seek peace." There was a long pause, during which the silence felt suffocating. Emma held her breath, waiting for a response. Outside, the ships remained suspended in the air, their lights casting an otherworldly glow over the town. The seconds stretched endlessly, each one feeling heavier than the last. Finally, the voice returned. "Your signal has neutralized our scanners. Explain your technology." Emma exhaled sharply, relief washing over her, but only briefly. Now they faced a new challenge, explaining something neither of them fully understood. How could they describe the device when Mr. Thompson himself didn't know its origins? All they knew was that it had come from his late wife, someone who had apparently been involved in top-secret work. Thinking quickly, Mr. Thompson adjusted the settings on the device again, attempting to send a visual transmission. A small screen, on the side, flickered to life, displaying a grainy image of Earth surrounded by mathematical symbols and diagrams. It was primitive compared to what the aliens likely used, but it was enough to convey their intent. Humanity valued knowledge, innovation, and cooperation. "They're analyzing it," Mr. Thompson whispered to Emma, his eyes fixed on the screen. "Let's hope they understand." While they waited, Emma's thoughts spiraled. Who were these beings? Why had they come to Earth? Were they explorers, conquerors, or something else entirely? And most importantly, what would happen next? For every question she asked herself, two more arose, leaving her head spinning. Outside, people continued to gather in the streets, staring up at the ships with a mixture of wonder and dread. News reports began flooding social media platforms, capturing footage of similar sightings across the globe. Entire cities stood still as humans watched the skies, united in their collective uncertainty. Yet none of those reports mentioned the role played by a grieving old man and a compassionate barista hiding in a basement. Back in Emma's apartment, time seemed to slow down. Every second felt like an eternity as they awaited the alien's decision. Mr. Thompson remained focused, his hands steady on the device, while Emma paced nervously, her mind racing with possibilities. They had stumbled into something far greater than either of them could have imagined, an encounter that could shape the future of humanity. Suddenly, the voice crackled again. This time it sounded less mechanical, almost curious. "Your actions demonstrate restraint. We will withdraw temporarily. Further contact will follow." Without another word, the transmission cut off, and the ships began ascending back into the heavens. The hum faded, replaced by an eerie silence. For a moment, Emma and Mr. Thompson simply stared at each other, too stunned to speak. Then realization dawned on Emma. Against all odds, they had succeeded. Whatever Mrs. Thompson had created, and whatever secrets she had entrusted to her husband, had given humanity a fighting chance. And though the immediate danger had passed, Emma knew their journey was far from over. The silence that followed the departure of the alien ships was deafening. Emma stood rooted to the spot, her heart pounding as she processed what had just happened. The hum of the ships had faded completely, leaving behind an unsettling stillness. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently, untouched by the chaos that had unfolded moments earlier. It was almost surreal, how quickly the world could shift from normalcy to something out of a science fiction novel. Mr. Thompson lowered the device slowly, his hands trembling slightly. He looked drained, the weight of the situation etched across his face. For someone who had spent years keeping this secret hidden, tonight had been nothing short of overwhelming. Yet, despite his exhaustion, there was a flicker of determination in his eyes, a resolve that told Emma he wasn't done yet. "We need to get upstairs," he said finally, breaking the silence. "We should check on the others." Emma nodded, though her legs felt like lead as they climbed back up the stairs. Her mind raced with questions. What exactly had happened? Had they truly communicated with beings from another world? And why had those beings chosen to retreat, instead of pressing their advantage? Part of her wanted to believe it was because of humanity's peaceful intentions, but another part couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. When they reached the ground floor, they found the front door wide open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the faint scent of ozone, an after effect of the ship's presence. Peering outside cautiously, Emma saw neighbors huddled together in small groups, whispering anxiously among themselves. Some were crying, others were praying, and a few were shouting into their phones, trying desperately to reach loved ones or authorities. No one seemed to know what to do next. "Are you okay?" a voice called out, snapping Emma's attention back to the present. Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman who lived 2 doors down, approached them with concern written all over her face. "What was that thing? Do you think it'll come back?" Emma opened her mouth to respond but hesitated. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? Before she could formulate an answer, Mr. Thompson stepped forward. "It's hard to say for sure," he said carefully, choosing his words with precision. "But I don't think they mean us harm, at least not right now. We need to stay calm and wait for more information." His tone was reassuring, and it seemed to have the desired effect. Mrs. Patel nodded, though her expression remained uneasy. Other neighbors began to gather around, bombarding them with questions about what they'd seen and heard. Emma noticed how everyone instinctively looked to Mr. Thompson for answers, even though he was just as much in the dark as they were. As the crowd grew larger, Emma pulled Mr. Thompson aside. "They're going to start asking too many questions," she whispered urgently. "We can't tell them about the device or about your wife's work. They'll freak out." Mr. Thompson sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "You're right. But we also can't leave them completely in the dark. People are scared and fear makes them unpredictable. If we don't give them some kind of direction, things could spiral out of control. Emma nodded reluctantly. She knew he was right. Panic would only make matters worse. Together, they decided to share a simplified version of events. They told the group that the ships had appeared suddenly, hovered briefly, and then left without causing any harm. They emphasized the importance of staying indoors and avoiding unnecessary risks until further notice. While vague, their explanation seemed to provide enough clarity to ease some of the tension. Once the immediate crisis appeared to be under control, Emma and Mr. Thompson retreated back inside Emma's apartment. The warmth of the space offered little comfort now. It felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. Both of them collapsed onto the couch, too exhausted to speak. After several minutes of silence, Emma finally broke it. "So, what happens now?" Mr. Thompson stared at the device resting on the coffee table between them. "I don't know," he admitted. "But whatever comes next, we'll have to face it together." Emma frowned. "Together? Why me? You barely know me." He turned to look at her, his expression softening. "Because you didn't walk away when you could have. You chose to help me tonight even though you didn't have to. That says a lot about who you are." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected such heartfelt gratitude, especially from someone who seemed so reserved. Still, she couldn't deny the bond that had formed between them over the course of the evening. In a strange way, they were kindred spirits, two lonely souls brought together by fate to confront something far greater than themselves. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. News outlets reported sightings of the ships worldwide, sparking widespread panic and speculation. Governments scrambled to issue statements, urging citizens to remain calm while military forces prepared for potential threats. Social media exploded with theories ranging from extraterrestrial invasions to government conspiracies. Amidst the chaos, Emma and Mr. Thompson kept a close eye on developments, using the device to monitor any signs of renewed alien activity. To their relief, the skies remained quiet, for now. But neither of them believed this was the end. The aliens' message had been clear. Further contact would follow. The question was when and how. As dawn approached, Emma realized she hadn't slept a wink. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her, but her mind refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, images of the ships flooded her thoughts. She wondered if life would ever return to normal, or if normalcy itself was a thing of the past. "You should try to get some sleep," Mr. Thompson suggested gently, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "We'll figure everything else out later." Emma shook her head. "I can't. Not after everything that's happened. Besides, what if they come back while we're asleep?" "They won't," he assured her. "If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already. Whatever their intentions are, they seem to value caution as much as we do." Though his words provided some comfort, Emma couldn't shake the nagging sense of unease. She glanced at the device again, its dull glow casting faint shadows across the room. "Do you really think your wife made this?" she asked quietly. Mr. Thompson hesitated before answering. "I'm certain of it. She was brilliant, always, working late nights on projects she couldn't talk about. At the time, I thought it was just classified research for the government. Now I wonder if she knew more than she let on." Emma studied him closely, seeing the pain in his eyes. "Did you ever ask her about it?" "No," he admitted, "and now I'll never get the chance." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the depth of his grief. "All I have left is this device and whatever secrets it holds." Emma reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'll figure it out together. Whatever this is, we'll make sure it helps protect people. Not just here, but everywhere." Her words seemed to lift a weight off Mr. Thompson's shoulders. He smiled weakly, nodding in agreement. For the first time since meeting him, Emma saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes, a spark of purpose reignited by the extraordinary events of the night. By mid-morning, the town of Maplewood had begun to settle into a fragile sense of normalcy. Emergency services patrolled the streets, offering reassurance to residents. Schools and businesses remained closed, but life continued in fits and starts. Neighbors checked on each other, sharing food and supplies in case the power went out, or worse came to pass. Meanwhile, Emma and Mr. Thompson decided to take a break from monitoring the skies. They needed to regroup, to think clearly and plan their next steps. Over breakfast, they discussed possible scenarios and strategies. What if the aliens returned demanding answers? Or worse, what if they interpreted humanity's fragmented responses as hostility? We need to prepare, Emma insisted. Not just for another encounter, but for the long haul. This isn't going to blow over anytime soon. I agree, Mr. Thompson replied. But preparation means more than just defending ourselves. It means understanding them and finding a way to communicate effectively. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Maybe we should reach out to experts, scientists, linguists, anyone who can help us decode their language and technology. Mr. Thompson considered the idea. It's risky. Once word gets out about the device, we'll lose control of the narrative. Governments will want it for themselves, and who knows what they'll do with it. True, Emma conceded. But keeping it hidden might not be an option either. Sooner or later, they'll find us. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Startled, Emma exchanged a wary glance with Mr. Thompson before answering it. Standing outside was a man in a dark suit, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. His badge gleamed in the sunlight as he introduced himself. Ms. Carter? Mr. Thompson? We're with Homeland Security. We'd like to ask you a few questions about last night. Emma's stomach dropped. Somehow they already knew. Emma's heart sank as she stared at the man in the dark suit. His presence was unnerving, calm but commanding, with an air of authority that made her feel like a child caught doing something wrong. Behind him, the 2 uniformed officers stood, rigidly, their expressions unreadable. It wasn't hard to guess why they were here. Somehow someone had connected the dots between the alien ships and Emma's apartment. May we come in? The man asked politely, though there was no mistaking the underlying demand in his tone. Emma hesitated, glancing back at Mr. Thompson for guidance. He looked equally uneasy, but nodded slightly, signaling her to comply. Reluctantly, she stepped aside and let them enter. The cozy warmth of her living room now felt suffocating, every corner scrutinized by sharp eyes. Once inside, the man introduced himself as Agent Harris. We've been monitoring reports of unusual activity in this area, he began, his voice smooth and measured. Several witnesses mentioned seeing lights coming from your building last night. Care to explain? Emma swallowed hard, her mind racing. She glanced at Mr. Thompson again, silently pleading for help. This was his secret, not hers, but now it involved her too. If they said the wrong thing, it could put both of them in danger. We saw the ships just like everyone else, Mr. Thompson spoke up, his tone steady despite the tension in the room. But we didn't see anything unusual about the building itself. Agent Harris raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. That's interesting, because satellite footage shows a significant energy spike originating from this location shortly before the ships retreated. Can you account for that? Emma's stomach churned. They knew more than she'd anticipated. There was no denying the truth, not without risking even greater consequences. But how much should they reveal? And how would these strangers react when they learned about the device? Before either of them could respond, one of the officers spotted the device sitting on the coffee table. What's that? He asked sharply, moving toward it. No, Mr. Thompson exclaimed, stepping forward to block him. You can't touch that. The sudden outburst drew everyone's attention. Agent Harris narrowed his eyes, studying the device intently. Care to tell me what it is? It's complicated, Emma interjected, trying to sound calm. It's something my friend brought with him. We don't fully understand how it works. Agent Harris crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. Let me be clear. Whatever that thing is, it's tied to last night's events. If you know something, and I suspect you do, you need to tell us. Lives may depend on it. Emma exchanged another anxious look with Mr. Thompson. They were cornered, with no easy way out. Keeping the device hidden had seemed like the safest option, but now it was clear that secrecy wouldn't protect them anymore. The only question was whether revealing the truth would make things better or worse. After a long pause, Mr. Thompson sighed heavily. "Fine," he said, his voice resigned. "I'll show you, but you need to promise me one thing. This stays between us. No government labs, no experiments. This device isn't meant to be weaponized." Agent Harris gave a curt nod, though his expression suggested he wasn't making any promises. With trembling hands, Mr. Thompson picked up the device and activated it. A low hum filled the room, accompanied by a faint glow emanating from its surface. Everyone watched in stunned silence as symbols and diagrams appeared on the small screen, mathematical equations and patterns that seemed to defy logic. "This belonged to my late wife," Mr. Thompson explained quietly. "She worked on classified projects involving advanced technology. Before she passed away, she told me to keep it safe. I never imagined it would be used like this." Agent Harris leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Does it communicate with the ships?" "Yes," Mr. Thompson admitted. "Last night it disrupted their scanners and allowed us to establish contact. They weren't hostile, at least not initially, but they made it clear that further interaction would follow." "And you didn't think to report this sooner?" Agent Harris demanded, his tone sharper now. "We didn't know who to trust," Emma blurted out defensively. "How could we be sure you wouldn't take it away and use it against them, or against us?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with implication. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Agent Harris straightened, his demeanor shifting slightly. "Fair point," he conceded. "But hiding it isn't an option anymore. We're dealing with a global crisis here. Humanity's survival might depend on understanding these beings, and this device could be our best chance." Emma felt a surge of frustration. "Survival? You mean exploitation? Governments always find a way to twist things for their own gain. What makes you any different?" Agent Harris met her gaze evenly. "Because if we don't figure this out, someone else will. Someone less concerned about ethics or consequences. Do you really want to take that risk?" Emma opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. As much as she hated to admit it, he had a point. Secrecy had protected them so far, but it wouldn't hold forever. Sooner or later, others would discover the device, and they might not share the same cautious approach. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do you propose?" Over the next hour, Agent Harris outlined a plan. He proposed forming a small confidential team of experts, including scientists, linguists, and engineers, to study the device and decode its capabilities. In exchange, he promised to keep their involvement limited to advisory roles, ensuring the device wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. While reluctant, Emma and Mr. Thompson agreed to cooperate, for now. They handed over the device temporarily under strict conditions. It would remain within Maplewood, monitored closely by both the government team and themselves. Any attempt to relocate it or misuse it would result in immediate withdrawal of their support. As the agents left with the device, Emma collapsed onto the couch, feeling drained. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked, her voice tinged with doubt. Mr. Thompson sat beside her, his expression grim. "I don't know, but we didn't have much choice. At least this way we'll still have some control over what happens next." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The government team set up operations in a nearby warehouse, transforming it into a makeshift research facility. Emma and Mr. Thompson visited daily, observing the progress while keeping a close eye on the device. Scientists pored over its mechanisms, running tests and simulations to unlock its secrets. Linguists worked tirelessly to decipher the alien language, piecing together fragments of communication captured during the initial encounter. Despite the collaborative effort, tensions ran high. Every discovery raised new questions, each more unsettling than the last. The aliens' technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, suggesting a level of advancement that bordered on incomprehensible. Some team members grew increasingly paranoid, convinced that the aliens' intentions couldn't possibly be benign. Others argued that fear would only hinder progress, urging everyone to focus on finding common ground. Amidst the chaos, Emma found herself drawn to Dr. Elena Ruiz, a brilliant astrophysicist who led the scientific analysis. Unlike many of her colleagues, Dr. Ruiz approached the project with a sense of wonder rather than suspicion. She believed that understanding the aliens' motives required empathy as much as intellect, an idea that resonated deeply with Emma. "You remind me of someone," Dr. Ruiz remarked one evening as they reviewed data together. "Someone brave enough to trust even when it's scary." Emma smiled faintly. "I'm not sure I'd call myself brave, more like desperate." Dr. Ruiz chuckled softly. "Desperation can look a lot like courage sometimes. Either way, your instincts are good. Communication is key. If we can bridge the gap between us and them, we might stand a chance." Her words offered a glimmer of hope, though Emma couldn't shake the lingering sense of unease. Each passing day brought reminders of the stakes, news reports of global unrest, protests demanding answers, and mounting pressure on governments to act decisively. The world teetered on the brink of panic, held together by fragile threads of uncertainty. One afternoon, as Emma and Mr. Thompson returned to the facility, they were greeted by an unexpected development. A message had been received, not from the aliens, but from Earth itself. A second device, identical to the one they had surrendered, had been discovered in a remote village halfway across the globe. Its owner claimed it had been left behind by a mysterious traveler years ago, along with instructions to safeguard it until needed. The implications were staggering. If there were multiple devices, who else might possess them? And what role did they play in humanity's future? Emma turned to Mr. Thompson, her heart pounding. "This changes everything," he nodded gravely. "Yes, it does, but maybe it's also a sign that we're not alone in this fight." For the first time since the ships had appeared, Emma allowed herself to believe that survival might be possible, not through fear or force, but through unity and understanding. Together, they would face whatever came next. The discovery of the second device sent shockwaves through the research team and the world. News of its existence spread rapidly, igniting debates and speculation about its origins and purpose. Governments scrambled to locate other potential devices while conspiracy theories flourished online. Some claimed they were gifts from benevolent extraterrestrials. Others insisted they were traps designed to enslave humanity. Amidst the chaos, Emma and Mr. Thompson clung to one certainty. The devices were tools for communication, not weapons. Their task now was to ensure they were used wisely. Dr. Elena Ruiz took charge of coordinating efforts between the two teams, one working on the original device in Maplewood, and the other analyzing the newly discovered device overseas. Despite the distance, collaboration proved surprisingly effective. Advances made by one team quickly benefited the other, accelerating their understanding of the technology. The devices shared similar features but also subtle differences, suggesting they had been tailored for specific purposes, or perhaps entrusted to different individuals for unique roles. As days turned into weeks, breakthroughs began to emerge. Scientists identified patterns within the alien language that hinted at mathematical precision. Linguists pieced together fragments of meaning, revealing phrases like harmony, exchange, and coexistence. These words offered a glimmer of optimism, reinforcing the belief that the aliens sought dialogue rather than domination. But progress came with challenges. Not everyone agreed on how to proceed. Military advisors pushed for preemptive measures, arguing that humanity needed to prepare for conflict. Civilian leaders countered that aggression could provoke retaliation, urging patience and diplomacy instead. Caught in the middle, Emma and Mr. Thompson found themselves advocating for restraint, a stance that earned them both allies and enemies. One evening, as tensions reached a boiling point, Emma confronted Agent Harris directly. "If we escalate this, we risk losing everything," she argued, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "We have no proof they're hostile. Why can't we focus on building trust instead of fear?" Agent Harris studied her carefully, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed. "Because fear is what keeps people alive. Trust takes time." Time we may not have. Emma shook her head. Fear will only divide us. If we want to survive, we need to unite. That starts with believing peace is possible. Her words struck a chord, not just with Agent Harris, but with many others who had grown weary of endless uncertainty. Slowly but surely, the tide began to shift. Public opinion leaned toward diplomacy, bolstered by grassroots movements calling for cooperation over confrontation. Even skeptics acknowledged that humanity's best chance lay in understanding, not hostility. Meanwhile, the aliens remained silent but not absent. Ships continued to patrol Earth's orbit, their presence a constant reminder of the unknown. Scientists speculated that they were observing, waiting for humanity to make the next move. This realization weighed heavily on Emma and Mr. Thompson, who felt the burden of responsibility growing with each passing day. One night, after a particularly grueling session at the facility, Emma sat alone in her apartment, staring out the window at the starry sky. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something big. Her thoughts drifted to Mr. Thompson, who had become more than just an acquaintance over the past weeks. He was a friend, a partner in navigating this extraordinary journey. Yet beneath his calm exterior, she sensed a deep sadness, a longing for closure he hadn't yet found. The next morning, Emma decided to visit him at his apartment. When he opened the door, she saw immediately that something was wrong. His eyes were red-rimmed and his hands trembled slightly as he invited her inside. "I've been thinking about my wife," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "All these years I've carried her memory like a weight. But now I feel like she's guiding me, like she always knew this moment would come." Emma placed a hand on his shoulder, offering what little comfort she could. "She must have loved you very much to trust you with something so important." He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "She did. And maybe it's time I honored that trust, not just by protecting the device, but by using it to help others." His words resonated deeply with Emma. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for connection, for a future where humanity could coexist with beings vastly different from themselves. It was a daunting prospect, but also an inspiring one. Their resolve strengthened, Emma and Mr. Thompson returned to the facility with renewed determination. Together with Dr. Ruiz and the rest of the team, they devised a bold plan to send a proactive message to the aliens, inviting further dialogue. Using insights gleaned from the devices, they crafted a transmission combining visual symbols, mathematical equations, and phrases in the alien language. The message emphasized humanity's desire for peace, curiosity, and mutual understanding. When the moment came to activate the transmission, Emma felt her heart pounding wildly. Every eye in the room was fixed on the screens, watching for any response. For several agonizing minutes there was nothing, only the hum of the devices and the faint glow of their displays. Then, suddenly, the screens flickered to life. A series of intricate patterns appeared, accompanied by a melodic tone unlike anything they'd heard before. The message was clear. The aliens had received their transmission, and they were responding. Excitement rippled through the room as scientists worked frantically to decode the reply. Bit by bit, the meaning became apparent. The aliens acknowledged humanity's efforts, expressing cautious interest in continued exchange. They proposed a meeting, a neutral location where representatives from both sides could engage directly. Cheers erupted among the team members, relief washing over them like a tidal wave. For the first time since the ships had appeared, hope felt tangible. Humanity wasn't facing annihilation. It was being given a chance to step onto a larger stage, to join a community of civilizations beyond Earth. Preparations for the meeting consumed the following weeks. A delegation was assembled, comprising scientists, diplomats, and cultural experts. Emma and Mr. Thompson were included, their knowledge of the devices making them invaluable assets. As they boarded a spacecraft designed to rendezvous with the aliens, Emma marveled at how far they'd come, from strangers brought together by fate to emissaries representing all of humanity. The encounter itself was surreal. The aliens were unlike anything anyone had imagined. Tall, luminous beings whose forms seemed to shimmer and shift like liquid light. Communication occurred through a combination of gestures, sounds, and mental impressions facilitated by the devices. Though challenging, it was profoundly moving. Each side listened intently, striving to understand perspectives shaped by entirely different realities. By the end of the meeting, agreements were reached. The aliens promised to share knowledge and resources, provided humanity demonstrated commitment to peaceful coexistence. In return, humanity gained access to technologies capable of solving some of its most pressing challenges: clean energy, advanced medicine, and sustainable living solutions. As the spacecraft returned to Earth, Emma gazed out the window at the blue-green planet below. Tears filled her eyes, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. Against all odds, humanity had risen to the occasion. Fear had given way to courage, division to unity. Back home, celebrations erupted worldwide. People gathered in streets and squares, cheering and embracing strangers as if rediscovering their shared humanity. For Mr. Thompson, the experience brought a sense of closure. He finally understood his wife's legacy, not just as a creator of incredible technology, but as a beacon of hope. As Emma stood beside him watching fireworks light up the night sky, she realized something profound. Life might never be the same again, but that was okay. Change wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace. Together they had faced the unknown and emerged stronger for it. And so, under a sky once parted by terror, Earth welcomed a new chapter. One filled with wonder, possibility, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow.